I want to tell you something. I'm so proud whenever I'm allowed to talk about my university, NTNU.
The NTNU has a unique historical legacy. You can actually find letters from the Pope from the 12th century, even a letter from 1077 talking about teaching in Trondheim.
NTNU is truly the beating heart of technology research in Norway, shaping markets and industries. Whether this is subsea right now, whether this is fish farming, it's punching significantly above its weight.
5 minutes away, we actually have deep water coral reefs. The whole fjord is filled up with history, archaeology, and biology.
Being a university heavily focused on the natural sciences and technology makes NTNU interested in developing new ideas. That even trickles down into the humanities. We can work on technological solutions, but if we don't understand the way in which these solutions are embedded into human life, we're missing out on something.
The cross-disciplinarity at NTNU I'm proud of. And of course the Nobel Prize, it's just fantastic. I'm very privileged being in such a working environment.
Not only two colleagues at the university, but there was one woman sitting there, and she was hardly 50. This is such an achievement. I had such goosebumps.
By diversity, both in cultures and also in coming from different fields, that is what makes this environment like a boiling pot of ideas.
I believe in knowledge for a better world.
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 Dear Deputy Secretary General, Mrs. Warner, dear Dr. Eller, dear Ambassador Sjåstad and dear Professor Wote, and dear colleagues and attendees, welcome to the 7th editions of the NTNU European Conference. As Prorector at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, it's my honor and pleasure to be the one opening today's conference proceedings. This is a milestone in our 7 years of presence here in Brussels. Over the years, the European Conference has established itself as an arena of reference for mutual discussions between science and policy, continuously growing with more than 400 physical and online registrations this year. We find ourselves today living in a times of history being written. As we approach the end of February, it is soon 1 year since the Russian troops entered the sovereign country of Ukraine, the 24th of February 2022. And this marked the end of a period in Europe, starting with the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 9th in 1989. Moreover, many in Europe and beyond are still dealing with the consequences and continuously ongoing challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the global world is experiencing increasing levels of autocratization. The power balance in international global political economics is steadily shifting, and the effect and impact on climate change are wide-ranging. European values and interests are being challenged, putting pressure on the European strategy autonomy, prompting the re-evaluation of existing European policies and strategies. And during this conference, today's stakeholders from science and academia will come together with stakeholders from industry, international organizations, and EU policymakers in discussing current and future challenges alongside the possibility strategy solution as we look ahead to the future of Europe. And this year's edition chosen a theme and title is in many ways reflecting on the current situation in Europe and the world. The future guiding the present. The role of research and innovation and education in navigating current and incoming EU challenges. It is a title and a theme that encourages us to look up towards the horizon and to the unknown, and to consider not just how we apply and shape policy and the role of research and innovation and education based on what we know, but also on what we do not know. The conference title provokes us also to note and consider the transversal nature of policy, together with the increasing multifaceted nature and growing needs for interdisciplinary approaches to the current and incoming challenges the EU and its associate friends are facing. We like to think of NTNU as a mission-oriented university, and we are also truly convinced of the importance of being present and contribute in areas where political discussions are shaping. Alongside our multidisciplinary nature, we collaborate closely with businesses, industry, with the public sector and governing authorities, as well as the third sector, and of course, with academic institutions. NTNU's vision, as you learned today, is knowledge for the better world. And our ambitions is therefore to contribute to find sustainable solution to the societal and grand challenges we are facing in our time. And as we find ourselves in a position to enter into the policy-oriented dialogue that defines the future priorities for the challenges ahead, our ambitions only contributes to grow. And future guiding the present, that is one of the driving forces for faculty in their research. Back in 2016, NTNU started a strategic process to improve its engagement in the European context, working in two directions. Internally, through mobilization of our researchers into EU projects and collaborations, and externally, for this design of long-term positioning strategy. We are steadily increasing our commitment and involvement in the European research area, the European education area, and also the European innovation area. With reference to this, allow me to mention some examples of recent achievements, like the launch of EOREA, the European Ocean Research and Education Alliance, in shared coordination with Aix-Marseille University, aiming to facilitate Europe's ocean research community in working together, contributing to reach the goal of the UN Decade of Ocean Science and the mission Restore Our Oceans and Waters by 2030, and the possible upcoming EIT Kick on Ocean, and other relevant ocean-focused program, both at the national as well as the European international level. NTNU is also a partner in one of the European University Alliances, ENHANCE, where we collaborate with important players in academia, like TU Berlin and Politecniche of Milano, to mention a few, and where we recently welcomed ETH Zurich and TU Delft and Gdansk into the alliance. Through this alliance, we are joining efforts in elaborating the potential for realizing the visions on how to grow European universities. And we are, as we speak, preparing a policy brief with a set of recommendations to the European Commission for further policy development within the European university agenda. Last but not least, we are extremely proud about having the Trondheim Innovation Ecosystem being selected as one partner of the two pilot projects that will have to design a possible model for the ERA hubs concept that EC has proposed as one of the 20 actions of the relaunched ERA strategy. These are just some of the examples of the increasing commitment that NTNU has put in the last year in the European context, and that is complemented by the Brussels office, directly hooked with the rectorate at NTNU, and working strategically with the faculties, allowing fast actions to be taken in an extremely dynamic European framework. And today's parallel sessions, looking at the four thematic areas: energy, raw materials, fair and inclusive society, and sustainable food systems, represent some of the key sectors where NTNU is engaged and is investing its effort to deliver impactful, exploitable knowledge and skills. Green shipping and related energy supply aspects, sustainable food systems, and the need to change consumers' habits and producers' approaches, raw materials, including critical materials, and reduction of dependence of Europe from China and a resilient well-being economy are all crucial elements of the Green Deal framework, contributing to its overall final decarbonization objective, and currently challenged by the set of crises Europe is facing. And as we all know, speed is crucial, but quality and excellence should remain the baseline to ensure European competitiveness in a complex geopolitical situation of today's global world. I hope this will be a baseline element of all our discussions being held here today. So let me finally thank and welcome the keynote speakers this morning and the panelists of the conference opening session. First of all, Elisabeth Werner, Deputy Secretary General for the Policy Coordination in the European Commission, Per Sandstråstad, Norway's Ambassador to Belgium, and Ena Woute, Professor and Pro-Vice Rector of International Affairs at TU Delft. I'm looking forward to appealing opening session, and I wish you all an interesting and a fruitful 7 editions of the NTNU European Conference. And then I pass back the floor to the conference moderator.
Thank you, Prorector Grande. Good morning, everybody. I'm Massimo Busuoli. I am the head of the Brussels office of NTNU, and I will be the master of ceremony, as sometime you are defined when you are moderating an important event on stage. Of course, it is my privilege to be your guide throughout the discussion today, and please take into account that we expect you to network like hell. This is the scope of this conference, of course, to make new friendship, to define new priorities, to discuss and get alignment and possible future collaboration for the benefit of Europe. I don't want to spend too much time on enjoying the stage, which I like very much, as you can imagine, as an Italian. And I would like to invite our first keynote speaker, Elisabeth Werner, Deputy Secretary General for Policy Coordination in the European Commission, which is going to talk to us about the twin transition in challenging times. Very appropriate. Thank you very much, Mrs. Werner, for being with us, and the stage is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and many thanks for the invitation, for the opportunity. As Massimo said, I would like to give you a quick kickoff in terms of where we are today in presenting, implementing, adopting, discussing the twin transition, the 2 big priorities that the Commission has set itself at the beginning of the mandate. For us, this has been an objective since the Commission took office, so in 2019, but of course a lot has changed since then, and the world today is not what it was in 2019. First of all, the COVID pandemic, and just as we thought we would overcome the uncertainty and come out actually economically strong, everyone was counting on a strong rebound, we have been hit by completely unprovoked aggression and war of Russia against Ukraine. In both these cases, we have witnessed the supply chains interrupted, which has shown us also the dependence and the resilience of European economy and society on the world. But more than that, it has had a very profound impact also on our energy system, with prices skyrocketing, and really a number of emergency measures have been taken. So From the Commission's point of view, we, along with the other institutions, the member states, I think probably in Norway the situation is very similar, we have tried to remain very steadfast in the conviction that the twin transition is more important even today than probably it was in 2019. Actually, what happened since then were wake-up calls for accelerating what we wanted to do in this twin transition for it to become a reality, because it would bring us into a better place to wither such shocks as we have seen, not only at European level, but globally. So let me start with the green transition and the Green Deal. That has been, of course, our roadmap for the transition towards a resource-efficient, circular economy, preserving the natural environment, biodiversity, combating pollution, and perhaps most prominently, tackling the climate change. So transformation from us for the beginning has been also a source of growth. We can see that the productivity in these sectors is higher, and it has created a lot of jobs. So in 2021, the EU enshrined the European climate law, the targets for reaching climate neutrality. Neutrality by 2050, and then very famously by 2030, the minus 55% CO2 reduction. And that was a very important moment to put this target into law. We're perhaps not the only ones who have a target, but we have it in a law. And that helped us a lot after that also to implementing, not implementing legislation in the technical term, but the legislation required to take us there. Adopted quite quickly, and that puts us on the track, and I think it fixes this target, and it also sends a very, very strong signal to businesses, but to research, to universities, that this is what we want to achieve together, and aligning our efforts in this direction. So at the heart, of course, as you know, of our way of getting us to the minus 55 is the carbon pricing, which is also quite a unique European model, in which we believe, because it is smart, it's effective, it's cost efficient, but also it generates revenues that can be used to accelerate this transition. A, in terms of investing in innovation, but B, also in making sure there is sort of a fair system, and there are accompanying measures to make sure everyone is taken on board in this transition. So in December last year, quite a number of absolutely crucial files as part of this Fit for 55 package were adopted. And I think that was really quite impressive also in terms of the speed and commitment that we have seen, in spite of all the ongoing events. I mean, we barely had the time to enjoy, but it's really, when you think back, quite a big step that has been taken when the co-legislators agreed this, while we were in the middle of still energy crisis, and nobody had anticipated, at least we hadn't anticipated, how gas would be weaponized in this conflict. When this became apparent, and that's also what happened in spring last year, we had another important proposal that I think is a key milestone in our transition, green transition, and that's, we call it the Repower EU plan, which is accelerating the green transition, but really actually weaning ourselves off the dependency from Russian natural gas, but ultimately finding renewable energy production in Europe to phase out fossil fuels over time. I'm saying over time because that's not going to happen from one day to the next, but last year in the EU, more electricity was produced from solar and wind than from coal. So I think quite an important moment also. The second big priority that we have had from the beginning is the digital transition. On the digital front, major milestones have been achieved, also with very fast agreements on legislative side. And here, to frame it a little bit, in March 2021, so 2 years ago now, the Commission presented the vision and avenues for the digital transformation to 2030, so same target year in the foreseeable future. And we had a digital compass for the digital decade with a focus on the different parameters that we would need to get us there. It was about skills, it was about connectivity, it was about business, but also very importantly about the public sector playing the role there and digitalizing itself, not always at the forefront, I have to say. So if we reach these goals, this will naturally speed up this digital transition and make it pervasive throughout the economy and contribute increasingly also, of course, to the green transition, because the two are inseparable. We will not succeed one without the other. Then we have had important legislation also on the Digital Market Act, the Digital Services Act, but also Artificial Intelligence Act, which, to my knowledge, was quite also sort of front-running legislative proposals compared to other parts of the world. And we're working still on the electronic identity. So many of these will speed up, as I said, the twin transition. If you think also about the work on the semiconductors, but sort of climate aspects of cloud and IT services, connectivity targets, they are very closely linked. What I want to underline at this occasion, could also have done it a little bit more with the green transition, is that this is not only about technology, and I think it came out very nicely also from the video that we have seen at the very beginning of the session, that this needs to be people-centered. We will not succeed this, even with the best supercomputers, if we don't have the people able to embrace it and able to master it. And so here, as we had for Social Climate Fund, it's very important that we have also people in mind when we do this transition. This is what we set out to do really pre the war, pre Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And now we have a new geopolitical reality. And that's, I think, also for policy makers, always the challenge. Now you have your long-term goals, and then you have unexpected events, emergency, pressing needs. And I think if I think back to the title of the sessions, one of these challenges is how you do short-term necessary measures in a way that they become a stepping stone to your long-term objectives. So they don't run counter. On the contrary, they take you a little bit further in the direction of your long-term goals. And in any case, never forget your long-term goals, because climate change will not wait until conflicts are resolved. So in that new geopolitical reality, we had a wake-up call for security of supplies in general, but security as a concept simply everywhere and throughout. We had, for the economy now, an environment with high interest rates, a lot of uncertainty. We also have a strong global competition, not always completely fair. There's a lot of not very transparent subsidies in China as well. So it's actually a difficult moment also for companies and for investors to do the right things and to make these investments in the current circumstances. And this is why last week, on the 1st of February, from the Commission side, we presented an outline for a European Green Deal industrial plan to speed up the industrial transformation leading us to the transition, especially the green transition. And it is based on 4 pillars, and I think these 4 pillars are really all equally important. I see, so the 4 pillars are a simplified regulatory framework so that we can act faster in the deployment of industrial capacity. The second one is faster and simpler access to funding, because while often money is there, often it takes a long time to be able to access it. The third and certainly very important one pillar is about skills. Again, skills and quality jobs, because we are seeing that this is a transformation, and like for supplies of goods or semiconductors or raw materials, we often see that there is more demand today than supply of people with the right skills, with the good skills, but at all levels. So we're not only talking about engineers and people with high university degrees. It is often also very simple manual work, not simple, but manual work, and people, drivers in gastronomy. So really, skills is something of the essence. And the fourth pillar on our side recognizes that this is a global challenge and a global transition, and it is very much focused on open and fair trade, because this is not about doing anything alone. This is about doing it in the way that we have worked in the past, engaging with partners across the world. So this European Green Deal Industrial Plan complements, and I would like to explain a little bit the other efforts that we have, because in Europe, we went in with a very strong regulatory framework, setting the targets, and we do have a financial enabling framework as well. What we didn't have so much is a focus on the industrial capacity of this. And that's what we're trying to complement with this Green Deal Industrial Plan, realizing that 35–40% of all jobs will be affected by the green transition. We have a European Year of Skills in 2023, and this is the moment that we focus also on these capacity aspects of production and supplies coming from Europe. We will propose a number of initiatives to help this, hand in hand, not only with the member states, but in particular with industry, also with social partners. There is the concept of a net zero industry academy, which is copied a little bit on the quite successful Batteries Academy, if some of you are familiar with this perhaps, that can be rolled out in strategic industries and to see how we can promote recognition of existing skills, because one aspect that is very important for us there is, of course, upskilling and reskilling people, but also for them to be able to have a portability of these skills so that they can move across the borders and they can move from industry to industry and carry these skills in a recognizable form with them. So that's one aspect that we had there. Was also previously already about the micro-credentials, and now we have mentioned the concept of the skills-first approach. I think both of them really aim at making it easy for people in a fast and flexible way to acquire skills. Also because you need to adapt quite quickly. The skills that we can spot today are necessary might actually no longer be the ones that we will be looking for in 4, 5, 6 years from now with technological evolution. So this is a lot of measures that we line out in this Green Deal Industrial Plan right now. This will also be discussed today in the European Council next door. We hope that on that basis the Commission can then elaborate the legal proposals that would go with it as well. Let me mention quickly 3 that are essentially underpinning this. So the Net Zero Industry Act, which will allow faster capacity increase on the production side, but we have been working for a while now on Critical Raw Materials Act, and we have also discussed and announced already a proposal to reform the electricity market in order really for the benefits of the lower cost of renewable energy to trigger down to the consumers in a better way. For all of this, of course, also a lot of discussion, but I don't think it's the topic here today, about the possibilities for states to provide support, so state aid framework, to be more flexible and to be more supportive to this, and of course how to make the best use of EU funding and how to mobilize private investment and capital to go in this direction, to go to the net zero industry, the clean tech industry, and invest there as a priority and as a growth area. With this, I'm coming to the end. So just to wrap up, I think 2023 outlook, a very important year again for the transition. Some say it may be the year where the CO2 emissions have peaked. Let's see if this will happen. But above all, the one thing we know is it will continue to be a year with a lot of uncertainty going forward. So we will remain agile. We will remain committed to supporting Ukraine, of course, in their fight. And I'm very looking forward to hearing also from you what it is that the regulatory framework on the EU side, what it is on the skills side, what it is that we can do for universities, for academia to contribute to these transitions on which we have set our mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabeth, for this extensive introduction, which I think is touching upon many of the topics we are going to discuss today in the various sessions. So it's an excellent start. And I would like to continue inviting on the stage Per Strand Kjærstad, more or less correct, and not as good as my vice rector, of course, given my Italian, Norwegian characteristic. Per Kjærstad is the ambassador of Norway to Belgium and deputy head of mission to the UN, and is going to present us how to boost the green transition and resilience, Norway as a key partner. The stand is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see good colleagues here today, President's Palace, for this gathering organized by NTNU. I think it's very timely indeed. It touches upon some key issues that is extremely important to discuss, and even more important to do something about practically on the ground. The Deputy Director General spoke about the true flagships of the Commission this period, the green transition and the digital transition. In addition to that, the way we interpret this is that there's added one extra layer to this, and that's the resilience. Perhaps could be seen as a third flagship in a sense, although it's more horizontal nature. Just a few key observations first about where we stand today and how we observe this from the north, from Oslo, from Norway, to the south. The first is that we have seen these extreme external shocks the last few years. We had the pandemic, we have the energy crisis, not the least the war in Ukraine due to Russian aggression. And it has really moved resilience issues up the pecking order on the agenda. But what makes me optimistic, I must say, is that the EU has a very good track record when it comes to responding to crisis. And I believe they also will have that in the coming years. Another observation is that we interpret what has been done in the EU the last few years, that you have managed to keep a steady course despite all these crises. That is quite impressive, I must admit. At the same time, I think we all acknowledge that now we approach the next stage, which is perhaps even more challenging, and that is the implementation on the ground in the different states. That is the big crunch time, and that's what we're working towards, 2030 and 2050. The last observation is also the climbing of focus, increased focus on competitiveness, on industrial policy, on the geopolitics. Mentioned by the Deputy Director General, the EU Industrial Plan, announced last week. Looks very interesting indeed. And also, we have noted that the EU is filling up the trade policy toolbox, which I believe, both directly and indirectly, are relevant for both transitions, both flagships. So, how can we drive progress further on these important tasks? I think it's a fair assumption that in life, in society, in politics, what is actually the main factor driving change is perhaps not public authorities. I think it basically is the behavior and efforts of private companies, research institutions, and others. And the second is changes in consumer behavior. Those two things will be decisive to reach our goals. But of course, public authorities and international organizations can be helpful and define frameworks that will facilitate reaching the objectives. One way of doing this is the public messaging, setting high ambitions and high priorities, which the EU has done now for quite some time. And we have followed that in Norway as well. The second thing is creating sound regulatory frameworks and financial incentives. I think also it's good speed in that area. And the third is supporting clusters in technology, research, innovation, and education. And one definitely needs a comprehensive approach in that respect to get where we want to get. There's of course some risks as well, as we will know. This will not happen automatically. A lot of hard work has to be done, also the coming years. And I think that from the present security and energy crisis, I will briefly mention two observations and lessons learned of special relevance to Norway, perhaps, and the rest of Europe. One is that energy security is essential to succeed in the green transformation. Otherwise, we will lose industry and we will lose public support. The second is that it's extremely important to uphold long-term objectives despite of short-term crisis. You got to keep your eye on the ball and don't miss your mark. At the same time, I would say we need to have some pragmatism. The toolbox now being established by the EU and Norway as a partner, you have to make adjustments in this toolbox if necessary. Some of the measures that are adopted may, perhaps in due course, not stand the test against reality. Then you have to change them. So some flexibility, pragmatism on the way, at the same time thinking long term, keeping eye on the ball, is essential. Finally, I would say a few words about Norway's place in this important work. Why or how can we be a contributor, a key partner to help achieve these objectives? And when these are really common objectives in Europe. Norway is, regardless of not being a full member of the EU, we are highly impacted by what is happening in the EU, both formally through our agreements, especially the European Economic Area, our program participation, but also more indirectly through the standards, models, and priorities set by the EU side. Firstly, I think one reason why we are a key partner is that we have basically the same objectives and priorities. We have launched our own comprehensive green industrial plan, amounting up to around 60 billion Norwegian kroner altogether over time, which is a substantial effort. We also support, of course, this drive towards safe value chains and diversification. The second reason why we are a key partner is what I mentioned. We have a strong framework, EA agreement, program participation, but also I think we all have to note that this framework is not static. We're all the time trying to expand this when mutually beneficial. And I can mention to you, we're in the process of negotiating a green alliance with the EU. And also, we are in the process of negotiating agreements on industrial partnership. And also beyond those areas, we're increasing contact and cooperation. So we need a certain top-up of the basic agreements, and we're working to get it. Thirdly, I think another reason why we are relevant in these processes is that we have a strong resource base. Natural resources have been the foundation of Norwegian business and industry for centuries, and will probably remain so. Of course, we will try to diversificate. Diversification is necessary, but still, resources will be the prime foundation. That's relevant for renewable energy. It's relevant for raw materials, which are in great need, and it's relevant for circular economy. Then also of relevance for Norway's participation is our strong institutions in research, technology, and innovation and skills. And I think the NTNU and also SINTEF, if I mention those as well, are key examples of this strong base. And finally, I think what makes Norway attractive and a key partner is that there is now a search for reliable, constructive, and long-term partners. That is part of the open strategic autonomy, and it's part of what's necessary to do to become less dependent on some unreliable sources beyond Europe. So we are this partner, it's a reliable partner. And I think that also creates trust, and trust is the gold of succeeding in the transitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sjøsted. Last but not least, of course, the crisis has impacted on universities, and I would like to invite on stage Einar Wouthe, who is professor and pro-vice rector of international affairs at TU Delft, that is going to present us her vision. One size does not fit all. The floor is yours, Einar.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. One size does not fit all. Let's use our diverse profiles strategically. As a person with a hybrid background, meaning a background both in industry and academia and with a design twist, it's my pleasure to share with you my perspective on the situation we're facing now. In Europe today, we are confronted with multiple challenges, as has been mentioned multiple times this morning, as all of you are no doubt aware of. Challenges ranging from the double transition, the twin green and digital transitions, to becoming more autonomous again. Challenges that demand new and innovative thinking. Relying solely on the past trends and logic will not bring us the desired progress. That's where universities, specifically universities of technology, come in. As TU Delft, we see ourselves as an ecosystem, a bottom-up ecosystem that relies on the energy, creativity, and passion of our diverse community of scientists. We shape our impact along the axis of science, technology, and design. In doing so, actually, we climb the ladders of the TRL, the IRL, and the SRL, the technology readiness levels, the innovation readiness levels, and the societal readiness levels. In order to achieve this, our ecosystem also includes startups and scale-ups, living labs, and test beds, and we maintain strong links to government bodies and policymakers. All this in order to make sure our research findings are turned into products and solutions that benefit society at the earliest opportunity. Only by doing so we can fulfill our mission to create impact for a better society. I think an aim not dissimilar from the aim of NTNU. The Dutch Minister of Education, Culture and Science succinctly demonstrated the impact of science related to COVID in 2 words. Science works. In fundamental research, for instance, TU Delft is very active in the fields of quantum computing, synthetic cells, climate engineering, and so on. We also are active member of the Dutch AI Coalition. The time to usage of knowledge coming out of this research is far ahead of us, but it will be key to Europe. For example, in discussions with the United States, to whom we should or should not export the advanced extreme UV chip-producing machines of ASML, we have a negotiation strength based on deep tech knowledge that is 10 to 20 years ahead of others. This shows we should work on our strengths, our European strengths of the future. Recent geopolitical developments have awakened our desire for more autonomy. This should already make us think, not just about how to deal with knowledge safety, for which we have developed a tool to increase awareness and create a balanced point of view, but also about how we can look forward. What can we do about the scarce materials we need so we are not entirely dependent on partners outside of Europe? Can we bring together brilliant scientists to design new materials that have the characteristics of scarce materials, like cobalt and nickel? Or can we come up with new ways of obtaining these minerals? Maybe we can develop more knowledge on deep-sea mining of so-called manganese nodules, also dubbed the new gold. Of course, in such a way that we don't interfere with nature, because we do not want to regret it later on. NTNU and TU Delft, and maybe a few other institutions, could jointly take on this challenge. But how can we enable our scientists to spend sufficient time on this without distraction from the many other things they also need to do? Even way before European Horizon calls for funding are published. Another thing is that we should make all of our fundamental knowledge we have count on the challenges we face. In the energy transition, of course, we've mentioned is an enormous task, and while a lot of knowledge is already available, it requires other ways of working in multi- and transdisciplinary settings, with purpose and challenge-driven scientists that really go for it. It calls for working across various technical disciplines and across borders. And on top of this, we need to bridge science to society by bringing in societal stakeholders to explore how research outcomes can land in real-life settings without regrets. I just told you about the innovative ecosystem where engineers and designers are already doing this in a more and more collaborative fashion at all system levels, making use of sandboxes, living labs, and co-design. An important part of this ecosystem is YES Delft, our leading tech incubator in Europe, and here we turn innovative ideas into successful businesses. A lot of work still lies ahead of us, but there is also a handover moment where application takes over from research, when other organizations take over from universities. Funding calls ideally do not mix these 2 stages to keep research focus intact. And finally, though it is the first of our responsibilities, I'd like to discuss our duty to build talent, our education. Here we are continuously in motion, catering to growth, developing our didactics, testing new educational technologies, and keeping students up to date with the latest knowledge and development. And of course, skills that go beyond the technical skills are a key element of this. Here we are also faced with significant challenges on top of those already mentioned. In the last 10 years, our student numbers have grown by 50%, much less so our research capacity. We are outgrowing the city of Delft, and we see the balance of Dutch European and non-European students changing each year. Of course, we will continue to welcome international students, even when that poses challenges and questions. How can we best build a workforce that is going to advance our continent in terms of talent, attitude, and values? Where would they come from? On what conditions? In which quantity? When we do not think this through well and evolve our ecosystem at a reasonable pace, we are afraid that this will harm our ecosystem. Society needs more scientists and engineers, but how to do this while keeping the scientific excellence intact? We happily joined the European University Alliance Enhance, as was mentioned before, together with the NTNU and other 8 high-class technical universities, a purposeful and enjoyable endeavor. But also a call where 44 to 60 alliances are doing more or less the same, fighting the same systemic hurdles as indicated by the European University Association last October. And all these tasks that are directed at universities create a dilemma. Not all universities can be world-class in all of these aspects. Let us not forget the saying that the jack of all trades is a master of none. In my view, we need a variety of university profiles, like we need a variety in academic careers, as pled for in the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, the COARA. Our individual scientists cannot be world-class in research, education, and innovation all at the same time. They should develop personal competences, building on their strengths, be part of a team with a mix of competences, and the composition of the team is led by what is needed to fulfill the strategy. Being sustainable, autonomous, and competitive is a strategy for Europe, isn't it? Could or should this diversity of profiles be a model for each university, country, and Europe itself? By doing what we've always done, we will not get the change we need. Let's be strategic, creative, and daring. Europe deserves this, and so is the world and our planet. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eina. So I think we got a lot of good provocation, and I would like to invite our speakers on stage for a round of debate. As we are running a bit out of time, I suggest we scratch 5 minutes from your coffee break, if you don't mind, so to have the possibility to also have a more fruitful and deep debate. So let me invite on stage Mrs. Werner, Ambassador Sjosted, Eina, and also an extra guest, which is Josse Volk. That's good. Thank you very much. We agreed about how to pronounce his name, which for an Italian is extremely difficult, which is the head of parliamentary affairs of Mr. Heller, that unfortunately couldn't be with us today due to a last-minute unexpected voting session that happened today. And you know, today is quite a complex day due to the vicinity of the council, the arrival of the president of Ukraine, and many other aspects. You see police around in the building. You had the troubles in entering. I mean, it has been an effort to organize this conference, I have to say, but we are here. Huh? So I think we had a very interesting set of initial thoughts. And I would like to start by challenging all of you about one aspect that I think is a sort of an elephant in the room, which is somehow the green transition is based on resources and assets. And the question that I think is still there is, do we have enough manufacturing capabilities, enough capacities, enough resources in terms of critical raw materials to fulfill the targets that we are currently trying to achieve? 2030 is behind the corner. I mean, 7 years and we are there. So what is the real situation, and what are the big challenges that are still ahead? There is a high dependence on China, for example, from primary raw materials, and this is undoubtful. Who wants to start answering on this? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I don't mind starting. First of all, let me start with apologizing on behalf of Mr. Ehler. He really wanted to be here, but as you said, it's a complicated day, including that last minute was scheduled that President Zelensky will address the European Parliament, and I hope you can all understand that President Zelensky being in the Parliament requires MEPs to be there as well. So Mr. Ehler apologizes, and I'll do my best to try to replace at least part of it, of what he would be saying. I'm not going to mimic his particular style, I think, but I think it's safe to say that Mr. Ehler would at this point say, to be frank, we don't know. And part of why we don't know is that although we have a European industrial strategy since 2020, which promised transition pathways for 14 ecosystems, they're not there. We have a few transition pathways for a few ecosystems, but key transition pathways are lacking. And exactly this exercise of transition pathways would allow us to get a good view of what do we have, what will we need, where do we have to work with international partners, where can we rely more on European partners. And the lack of these transition pathways, I think, is a very big challenge for answering your question. Do we have enough? We don't know. In the headlines, we have all the potential. That's for sure. I mean, and personally, I work mostly on research and innovation policy, and there's no doubt that Europe has the research and innovation capacity to lead. But do we have the infrastructure available, the raw materials, or the regulatory framework to allow that to happen in Europe? Honestly, we don't know.
I think you are the one that should reply to this, Elizabeth.
Well, I think you have heard perhaps some hints already in my opening remarks as to how we look at this for the time being. And that is really that the security of supplies has, as you said, moved up in the pecking orders. Huh? So there is a concern that we don't want to replace one dependency with another dependency when we phase out, say, Russian natural gas and we become dependent on very concentrated supplies for raw materials, but also for technology that is required for renewable energy. And that is at the heart of some of these proposals we are currently working on. The key is to have a good information, to monitor, to diversify your supplies. And this in a structural way, so not as we have done for a proposal, I don't know how well you know, but about an emergency intervention when we have trouble with the single market due to some shocks, but in a structural way on a permanent basis. Here, the idea obviously is first of all to look at the suppliers. For raw materials, this is actually not only about the mining and the exploitation, it is very much also on where they are being refined, because you can today see that there is a very much integrated value chain across the globe. So even if some of the extraction takes place somewhere in Africa, the refining may still take place in China before the product comes back to Europe. So really across the whole chain of preparing and processing these raw materials. And what I want to emphasize here is that, okay, your natural resources are what they are, but you can know them better, you can plan them better, and what is most important here, I think, for the EU context is also the secondary raw materials. So building a circularity, building a recycling, and really working on innovation for substitution as well.
I think I would like also to challenge the Norwegian ambassador on this, because basically Norway in the last period is also investing in the realization of production plants on batteries, which are highly dependent on raw materials. So the question that has been also touched by Elizabeth is we don't want to generate a dependence, changing a dependence from one side to another, but it is real that at the end, if we become producer of batteries, we will be dependent by raw materials providers. So what is the overall view of Norway in building this new business model for the country? And how do you see we can face the possible dependence from partners that at the moment, let's say, are not our best friends or doesn't show to be our best friends?
I think we have to be realistic where we're going. We're not talking about self-sufficiency. Europe will not be self-sufficient in many areas of strategic importance, but we have to correct the course we had in the past. So I think what we have to look at, and also pointed out by the Commission several times, a combination of diversification, less dependency on reliable sources and countries, and with stronger industrial base in Europe. It's the sum of these different paths that will be the solution. Also, I think when it comes to the stronger industrial base in Europe, it's a bit tricky on how we kickstart the markets which are underdeveloped or not mature. What we see in key areas, one thing is batteries, which is halfway mature, but not fully mature. We have areas like hydrogen, low carbon solutions in energy, and so forth. And the challenge is how to move these new markets and solutions to whole value chain in parallel, the chicken and egg problem. And also pointed out by the Deputy Director General in her opening statement, is that we do see now that quite a few companies are holding back investments due to uncertainty. That uncertainty is partly generated by external shocks, but also because we, public authorities, are not clear enough about our intentions. So we have to discuss further, how can we get the whole value chains going? Raw materials, important. Norway will do its part on that. Taxonomy, financial incentives, research and development, and so forth. But there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to self-sufficient, or not self-sufficient, but stronger industrial base part of this question.
Thank you. There is a third dimension, which is the skills. The Commission is starting talking about skills since I've seen it for the first time in the communication related to the innovation agenda, where there is a claim for 1 million deep tech skilled people to be trained. The recent Green Deal industrial plan is pointing the attention on skills. This has also been underlined. You also said that there is no one solution fits all. So basically, apparently universities today are under pressure where they should deliver on everything. There is also the modern university strategy that the Commission is pushing also to elevate the traditional university to the capability to produce innovation. So there is really a rush toward generating innovation. So what are the elements of pressure, and how do you think the university can achieve the right flexibility to even produce fast skills, if I may say, because Europe needs knowledge also to sustain.
First of all, maybe around skills. There's various types of skills. You mentioned on the one hand side the deep tech skills, which I think is a second nature to technical universities to teach those. Of course, we should continue that, and we should try and increase our capacity. At the same time, we have the less technical skills, because there's also a lot of people that need to have enough understanding to be able to implement things. So, and there, of course, the more social skills, but also critical thinking to adhere to our European values play a role. So I think we should add more skills to the students in our universities, from tech also to more social skills, more, they call them transferable personal and social skills. At the same time, we need to teach, basically a lot of people, because everything is changing. So the job of today is maybe not your job of tomorrow. So lifelong learning, it should be a second nature to us, and we should cater for that as well. And of course, in the Erasmus Plus, there's a lot of discussion about this, and then also we get the dilemma, oh yeah, okay, but then all these students need to come to your university, and then I think, oh, okay, I understand that, but at the same time we don't have housing for these students, as we have a general housing problem in the Netherlands. So how can we do this? There, I think technology can help us a lot. If you can do online education and put that in a blended shape, so it is maybe online from wherever country, wherever university in Europe, and then you do your exercises maybe blended on a local scale. So there is a lot to these skills, and I think everything will change. So everybody that's not curious and not actually thinking about what you should teach yourself tomorrow, then wake up, because everybody needs to change. But it is a challenge. So we need to change the skills that we teach, and we need to up the capacity. And specifically the last is something we struggle with, because we do not want to we still want to keep our ecosystem. And our ecosystem is a sort of top-down and bottom-up. It's very often research-driven, and that is by the passion and the energy of the researchers. And education is an element of it. Some people are very enthused by education as well. So I am personally a strong believer in different profiles. So you have people that really go into the deep tech research. You have people that are more prone to education, developing education, giving education. And the last strand I think we still need to develop further is actually what we call putting it into industry, what we call it again. It's a strange word which is not in the dictionary, but so also applying your knowledge. And that last one, I think we do it in Delft. We have our incubator, etc. But the scientists are not necessarily connected to. Some are. How can we also develop that third strand? So there's a lot on our plate, and we are willing to move. But we should do it in a pace that we keep intact our ecosystem, because in the end, we also need to capture the passion of the people. And with different profiles, you can capture a lot of passion, but don't ask us to do more than the passion we have in-house.
I think this is an excellent provocation for even this afternoon final panel debate. I will recall it to the panelists there. Jose, I see you want to intervene, yeah?
Yeah, just to add a little bit, one thing that we shouldn't forget when we ask universities to provide skills, to develop skills, is to make sure that we also make it attractive enough for people in Europe to be scientists. And I mean, in the end, early career research question is a very important one, where we just see that Europe faces an incredible challenge. Of course, the Commissioner wants to do a partnership on this, and I think there's a lot of movement in this. But often when we talk about skills in the industrial policy, we look at universities to deliver the skills for the rest of our economy. But I think we need to make it an integral part, that we also make it very attractive to actually be a scientist. But because in the end, that's also where the knowledge starts. So I just wanted to add to that, to the burden of universities, but actually also we need to help you. We need to help you.
Well noted.
Yeah.
I would like to open the possibility for the floor to pose one, maximum two questions, depending on the first one, if it will be a short one, okay? So, as you are in a very fancy room, you should open the armchair near to you, and there is a microphone. You activate by pushing the button. How modern we are, you see? And you can handle yourself the question. Please introduce yourself. Yeah, please. The gentleman behind.
Yes, it works. Good. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the very interesting presentations. My name is Paul Altenaar. I work for Sea Europe. We represent the manufacturers and building of seagoing vessels. It's a question to Mrs. Elizabeth Werner, actually. It's on the GDIP. Thank you for referring to that. Of course, shipping will also be part of the breakout sessions later to this morning. At the moment, we understand the European Commission does not have the intention to include the maritime sector under the GDIP. It's a very specific question, but I would like to have your views on that. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's actually an easy question for me to answer. In the communication last week, we gave a couple of examples of what we think are net zero technologies. We also pointed out that there needs to be a further discussion as to the scoping for the upcoming act, the legislative proposals. I do see from today, and I said this discussion is still to take place, that this would be something focusing really on technologies taking us to net zero. So I don't think you would see the whole maritime sector as such included, but on fuels in particular, we certainly will have a good look.
I have the gentleman there, yeah? And I try to keep you also, okay?
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Good morning. I just wanted to ask two panelists, what can we do to encourage and support the youth, students and so on, to go to research? I think young people face today many challenges, economic challenges, pandemic challenges, etc. How can we encourage them to give priority to research or to a research-minded career path?
Let's say, I suspect this for you, enough.
Well, I think one of the things I see, which I find encouraging with the younger students, actually, that they're all looking for a purpose to strive for. And I think in science, very often they can find this purpose because there is also space to design it yourself. I think that is important. Of course, you have to radiate enthusiasm. In the Netherlands, for instance, one of the issues we have is that when you look at the payment of the universities, that is decent, we have a good living, but it's very different from industry. So when you really would like to keep in more people and sort of stop the leakage of the pipeline, as we sometimes call it, I think that is an area where you should take a look at as well. To pay them sort of at least to be able to compete with industry, because that's where they often go. And also to attract people, foreign people, very smart people, and maybe also from outside Europe. If you look at, for instance, the United States, they are not actually considering to work in Europe because they earn not enough to ensure that their children later on will be able to afford education in the US. And that's maybe a very practical thing. So I think also there's maybe a few systems we can think through in order to attract the brilliant talent that is around in the world.
Maybe this is something also that is going to be approached in the European Year of Skills. Do you think, Elisabeth? Or?
Yes, I think it's a very important point that Professor Inna touched up, and sorry. And that is how to attract talent and retain talent, and how to make it attractive to be a scientist working in Europe, because what is, I think, extensively clear is that we need technological advancements if we want to go to the net zero. We have our minds very much set now on our 2030 targets, but as you also pointed out, for science, 2030 is already tomorrow, and we need to think about the moments after and what we can't even, at least as a policy maker, we can't even factor in right now that this still has to happen for us to become net zero.
Perfect. As we are definitely out of time, and I know I'm profiting of your coffee break, I suggest we devote an applause to our speaker, thanking them for the good note. You're going to have your coffee break, and then afterwards we are going to have the parallel sessions. Food will be just on the other side of the square here. And the raw material and green shipping will be on the parallel rooms just behind that wall. And the well-being economists will be in this room. So see you in a while, enjoy your coffee break, and feel free to challenge our speakers also during it. Yes.
At home when he's with me. That's what he told me when he left me, leaving me desperately trying to understand, desperately trying to find a home for him to move to, desperately trying to find a place for us to stay. He said it never really got through to me, that I never opened up emotionally. Guess I kinda lost my trust on the way. Since he's gone, I'm sinking deeper into who I really am. Now I'm brave enough to show what's inside, but it's too late. They don't never loved me, that he always sought for his feelings to grow. And I went on hoping for things to change, since he's gonna keep on finding out all these little things about him, realizing that she was almost there without. Looking back, I have to admit that things went wrong long ago. So please take the sorrow you gave and leave. I'm desperately trying to cleanse myself of all this lies.